I am Clare Sullivan. I am a performer. I performed a show called Space Cadet in the Comedy Festival. I got a 1-star review from the Herald Sun. But it's like, it was my worst night. So they said it was crap. And I was like, it wasn't that crap. But it was crap that night.
The show I did was a split show for the Comedy Festival, meaning myself and another comic, David Tulk, shared an hour, and we simply divided it down the middle pretty much. I thought that it would be really uncool if I had a Herald Sun reviewer in the room and I didn't use all of my Herald Sun jokes. I thought that would just be an act of extreme cowardice and I wouldn't be able to live with myself. So I don't know whether he took that personally or not, but he gave the show a terrible review.
So my name is Mikey Cahill, and I have been watching the Herald Sun for nearly 9 years. We have a sort of about 8 to 10 top line reviewers, which will get the big shows, and then that second tier down, a bunch of other good writers who aren't necessarily specialist comedy reviewers, and then the third tier down, comedians that are sort of, doing rooms 20 or 30 seater rooms, and maybe even smaller, who want their show reviewed. There's an email that goes out with tips on how to review. It's about trying to read the room, read what the comedian's trying to say, give a nice general overview. So it's actually quite sort of regimented. I think bad reviewers write harsh reviews. I think good reviewers write very critical reviews. The one that Shannon Deary wrote about the girl who was an astronaut, Sullivan, yep. That could be perceived as being a personal attack. But at the same time, it's not, because that's a reviewer's opinion about someone he went along and thought that was going to be funny, which he didn't find funny.
I didn't read the review until my show finished. I knew I had it. I'm like, I'm not going to read that. I don't want to pull down by that negativity. I don't really care about the review. They gave me a really cool pull quote, which is, there are no jokes, which is like the best. That's like the funniest. I'm going to keep it on my poster for years. Also, like, every other review I've ever gotten have all been positive.
I do know that he didn't mention any of the stuff I said about the Herald Sun, which I thought was really interesting. What I did hear of the review made no sense to me, because he basically said, there's no real jokes or a point or anything like that. Suddenly there's my face and David Tulk's, and it just says laugh-free hour. So I didn't read beyond that, because I went, well, that's a lie. I was at that show and people were laughing. But he gave us 1.5 stars instead of 1. If they gave us 1 star, you can use that. But 1.5 is sort of nothing. It's like,
But I love that attitude to change. Like, if it's not 4 stars, I want it to be 1 star. That's a lot of comedians have that. Yeah, if it's not at least 4, I'd rather the reviewer just didn't get it at all. But definitely this year, there's another thing that goes out in the before we start reviewing is, do not give out a 5-star review unless this is the perfect show.
On the 16th of April, towards the end of the Comedy Festival, they released this article which said the best and worst shows of the Comedy Festival.
Yeah, well, that's where it did become nasty, actually. That became proper. Because, that bit about me disagreeing with what he saw, you can always put that down to, that's just my opinion. I remember talking to people outside Town Hall and saying, remember when I said a few days ago that, I'm going to go on social media and I'm going to talk shit about the Herald Sun, because what are they going to do? Review me again? And they did. And they put us on the best and on the worst of the festival. Blew my mind. So what a pack of arseholes.
We didn't okay the story. The online people did. They're the ones that they sort of we weren't that happy with how it all rolled out. And straight away we all thought that word worst, it's harsh. I've got 2 thoughts of this. My first is, we do it for music, we do the best and worst. We do it for movies, we do it the best and worst. Why not do it for the comedy? There are people's feelings at stake. There's a lot of really, you get up, if you're in a band, you're behind a bunch of instruments, you've got a whole bunch of people around you, you can kind of brush it off. It's just one guy's opinion. If you're on stage with a mic, and that's the whole reason we're talking really today, is people got hurt.
I was the only 1-star a person on that list, but there were several other people that gave 1-star reviews to. But the only people that they advertised in that article were people who still had shows to go see. Because they're talking about what shows you should go see now the comedy festival's about to end. Yeah. So the point of the article is like, see these guys, don't see these guys.
One of the things that made me angry was that people stepped in to say, hey, it doesn't matter, it's shut your fucking mouth. You're not getting the empty rooms and all of this stuff where you can't tell if it's because of reviews or because of other aspects.
I didn't get numbers affected. In fact, the last few shows had like the biggest audiences. So, and as far as I could tell, the only people that came to the show that knew about the article were other comedians.
I'm Simone. I'm the director of the Butterfly Club. The idea to present a season made up of as many people as we could get who were on the worst list came up basically immediately. We saw the article. It was widely shared on social media. There was quite a lot of conversation going on in the industry about it. And we immediately thought that it would be wonderful to see what would happen if these performers were given a second chance. And look, some of these people, they have lives and professional lives. One of them is in Japan, couldn't make it. But we managed to find 4 that were willing to come and play and have another go.
So Dean Watson is he used to do stand-up comedy. In that article, the headline is Precious Gen Y Comedians Upset About Reviews, something like that. And then in the article he talks about how the Butterfly Club put on this series of encore performances directly in retaliation to that article. Then he says about how Gen Y comedians can't handle bad reviews, and that's why the Butterfly Club put it on, essentially. But it's like, I'm the only Gen Y comedian on this Butterfly Club lineup, and I don't give a shit about their review. Like, I didn't go wailing about it.
I think journalists have the duty to be honest about what they write in a review. And I don't think that's at stake here. I think that, people who work for the Herald Sun, just like people who work for The Age, they've been around a while. They know what they like, they know what they don't like, and they know how to write about it. But the issue is about decontextualizing those reviews. It's about picking up someone that made a very good case as to why they didn't like a show and just take away the headline and say, well, these people didn't do very well, so let's have a laugh at their expense. And by the way, don't go and see their show, full stop. And the only benefit I can think of from what I've seen is to drive a few more clicks to a web page that is full of advertisements.
Next year, there won't be a best and a worst story, okay? There won't be. It will be done with much more tact. It might be the shows we rated 5 stars and 4 stars, and the ones that got the 2s and 1s.
Look, we're not going to change our relationship to any newspaper because we don't have an issue with the reviews themselves. And I don't think that one poor editorial choice is grounds for completely, banning one or the other publication. We won't, that's not the point.
I mean, it's fine now. It's 2 or 3 months later, and I haven't killed myself or anything. And what I've learned a very powerful lesson, which is don't do a Melbourne International Comedy Festival show. It's too much fucking hard work.